The Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's a Friday. It's a live broadcast, August 1st, 2014. First day of August already. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host with my son Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, information you need to know, and analysis of it the same. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. That's really our statement, I suppose. It depends on how you look at it and using what glasses, of course. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, and bring you the news behind the news. Look beyond the fog of disinformation, misinformation, deliberate distraction, and deception. We broadcast live every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base on the Internet is HomelandSecurityUS.com. I'll be populating that with additional articles of this weekend. I haven't had a chance to write. Been taking care of other matters here. And I'll also be populating HagmannandHagmann.com. That's our new show website. There, of course, you can, through one click, you can get our broadcast, you can get our free app. What I'll be doing is putting together the program summaries, the show summaries, as many have asked for, and that's a labor-intensive project. However, it will get done. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Thank you for your belief and your trust in us as we walk through what I term this minefield of current events together, and indeed it is. We've got a lot of news, information to get through, stuff that is extremely important that we all need to discuss. Now, there is an issue. I'm going to just lead off with this, bring Joe on, and there's an issue that I do want to address, and that's we're going to get into that here in a little bit. This kind of represents a change of direction for me, and before the show started, something that was brought to my attention. Folks, have you, and we'll talk about this more in detail, but have you noticed what has been going on with the White House? And you know, I got to tell you, frankly, I didn't really notice this, but there's this Special Olympics. So there was a Special Olympics dinner last night. Now, there were celebrities there, music celebrities, but the focus appeared to be on Katy Perry. Now, Greg Jackson, if you happen to be listening to this, I believe if you can give us a call at your convenience. I know you're in transit, otherwise super busy. I know that you know about Katy Perry, about her background, her father. It'd be great just to weigh in on this topic for a few moments at your leisure, because this is something, folks, that we need to talk about. This is satanic, based in the White House. Satanism extraordinaire, based in the White House. And as usual, it's all under the auspices of caring for the children. Yet this regime has the most vulnerable of the children, those with special needs, changing the lighting to a blood red lighting, and of course having the focus on Katy Perry, a self-proclaimed witch, if you will, selling her soul to Satan. Now, that doesn't bring chills up and down your spine. I don't know what will. But Greg Jackson, so if you're listening, give us a call and weigh in on this, Katy Perry, because I know that you know the background, I believe, and you know, it's interesting because I think it's important. I think it's extremely important because this is the direction, the demonic deception that everyone is tied in. And by the way, her album Dark Horse, I mean, Obama appears to like her album Dark Horse. That was released on September 17th, 2013. Those people who know about numbers, the importance of occult numerology, know that that could be a kind of a secret wink and nod there in that particular sequence of numbers. But again, this is something we'll get into as the show unfolds. But more news and information to follow. I'm going to turn it over to Joe at this point for his opening as well.
Well, glad to be here on this first day of August. Seems like summer is just flying by, and that's because it is. I don't know, Dad, if you saw this also, what was going on at the White House. A new executive order was issued. Revised list of quarantainable communicable diseases. And this has to do with this executive order 13295. And this is under the recommendation of the Secretary of Health and Human Services in consultation with the Acting Surgeon General and for the purposes set forth in Section 1 of Executive Orders 13295 of April 4th, 2003. And it goes on to say that severe acute respiratory syndromes, which are diseases that are associated with fever and signs of symptoms of pneumonia or other respiratory illnesses, are capable of being transmitted from person to person, and that either are causing or have the potential to cause a pandemic, or upon infection are highly likely to cause mortality or serious morbidity if not properly controlled. This subsection does not apply to influenza. And then it goes on into the provisions, which it says the authority are granted by law to an executive department agency head thereof, the functions of the Director of Office Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative, or legislative proposals in order to properly control any possible contaminations from communicable diseases. And I don't know how to go through the old laws, the old executive orders that it cites to see what kind of power it gives, but this is something that I'm not sure, how bad this Ebola virus stuff's being hyped up to be something pretty nasty. And I know it is nasty for those who get the disease, but the question remains, as reports are varying from one side of the spectrum to the other, that this is very easily transmittable to it's needs to have an interaction of other people's body fluids to catch it. There's also claims that it's airborne, aerosol. Ebola was created and is being spread around. And there's lots of questions, concerns, unanswered questions about what this disease is going to do, how likely is it to spread to other people, how easily can it spread to other people, and is it a cause for concern, or other diseases like AIDS and diseases that spread around in third world countries kill far more people than what we're seeing with the death tolls now. And I know that this is relatively new, within a matter of weeks, but is this something that we need to be concerned about as much as the media is propping it up to be, is the question I'm asking.
Merely the suspicion of an outbreak or any type of pandemic could certainly give the approval for federal authorities to seize their draconian powers, detain Americans who are not even affected with the Ebola virus. And Alex Jones talks about this quite a bit of detail. And look, I know, folks, some listeners will say, look, we've been under martial law since 1861, through General Orders 100, the Lieber Act, and so on and so forth. I understand that. I get that. I understand the backdrop of that. But when you look at what's taking place right now, you are looking at these. You've got to look at this, take a few steps back, look at recent history. This is the problem, I think, that folks, I really believe that we, and even some say especially me, but we all get sort of wrapped up in things, and we tend to have short memory spans, don't we? Isn't that just the way? If you take a few steps back and think about all of the activities that were done at the hands of the federal government over the past several months, over the past few years, look at the preparations that they made, and they continue to make. Remember all of the orders for body bags. Well, look, a body bag is not a perishable item. It doesn't go bad. It might get a little musty. I don't think too many people will complain about that. But the fact of the matter is, we've seen these things in the history, recent history. Is this a coincidence, folks? Between the body bags, ordering body bags, and stocking up on body bags, and of course the rotation, or I shouldn't say rotation, the implementation of certain executive orders. I think we need to be paying attention. Vince Onelli, who has a radio program, spoke about this a lot. I got an email today, both from Vince as well as a few others, about Obama's signing of his Ebola executive order, and I think we need to be paying very close attention to this. Now, Vince is not one. If you've ever heard Vince Finelli, he has USA Prepared, or USAPrepares.com. That's USAPrepares.com. If you've ever heard him speak, or if you've ever heard his radio program, you know he's not one for hyperbole. So when he says, I'm concerned, yeah, me too. I'm concerned too. Are we looking at a false flag?
Are we concerned about the threat of the virus, or are we concerned about the threat that the government now asserts due to potential of this virus spreading?
Yes. Yes to both. Look, I believe that there is a threat. And folks, having researched this, I had an extremely bad night last night, and oh my goodness, at 4, 5, and 6 this morning, I was looking through materials, doing some research for tonight's show, and based on everything I can tell, you've got the threat of the virus itself coming, well, in variations and variants of the virus, but with the virus itself coming from Africa, of course, in a manner. And in Africa, if you look at how the virus is spreading, it's not spreading in the usual manner. It's spreading opposite the way one would expect it to spread. That's number one. Then you've got the variants of the virus itself. And I won't get into the technicalities because no one will remember them anyway, and it doesn't matter. But the variations of the mutations of the virus, the resistance to treatment, the superbugs, the antibiotic-resistant superbugs, and then you've got the weaponized kind, the stuff created by and held by military laboratories. Some of the least secure locations here in the United States. How hard would it be to have an outbreak and have it blamed upon gun-holding right-wing Christian zealots, for example, protesting the influx from the southern border? Think about it. You've got to think outside of the box, of course, as I like to say. So we're concerned about all of the above, and then concerned as well about Obama being able to use his self-designated and uncontested by Congress, by authority, his ability to take over everything. But see, and this is one of the factors as well that we get wrapped up in. People will automatically go to the Democrat or Republican side and say, well, Obama, thank goodness for the elections that are coming up. If you think that the elections by themselves are going to change anything, to me, you're sadly mistaken. We need a fire hose to clean out the entirety of Washington, D.C., from Bonnier on down. And that's the only way it's going to work. But he's given himself the ability to shut down airports, to commandeer homes, to commandeer, everything, the food supply. But it goes back to Bush, and it goes back to Clinton, and it goes back to Bush, and it goes back further and further and further. We've been building up to this point. So those people who want to call us conspiracy kooks, just look at the facts. We don't even have to. We don't even have to overstate anything or hype anything. Look at the facts. Where's this all going to? What are we concerned about? We're concerned about both.
Yeah, and very well said. So we see this, there are more stories on what this virus is doing across the world. You have some, I don't know, you saw this today, what happened in New York City, the largest emergency health, the most massive emergency drill in New York City based on health. New York City Department of Health conducted a massive emergency preparedness drill at 30 facilities across the city on Friday. They tested the delivery of emergency medications in the event of a biological attack such as anthrax or other large-scale public health emergencies in the city. The majority of deliveries will take place to public schools or to schools or public buildings. The largest surprise drill in the city's history was today. The drill was scheduled to take place from approximately 6:30 a.m. until 3 p.m. The majority of participants were given no notice, this way to better test and simulate a real emergency response. The New York City Health Department is responsible for developing and executing plans for the mass dispensing of life-saving medicine in response to public health emergencies, said Dr. Barboat, first Deputy Commissioner of the Health Department. This exercise demonstrates our commitment to ensuring we have the capability and resources to protect the health and safety of all New Yorkers in times of crisis. So this happened today, and the timing, couldn't be more questionable when we see the media hype that is going along with this virus. Apparently, there were two people who were flown to Atlanta with the Ebola virus, and many people, including Donald Trump, spoke out, saying keep them out, of the United States. They're being treated at the Atlanta hospital, as the latest reports indicate. Now, we have other news. Back the situation with Israel and Gaza, there was a ceasefire that was agreed to. And after the ceasefire was agreed to, Hamas detonated a suicide bomb and kidnapped an IDF soldier 90 minutes into the ceasefire. So now all bets are off in talking about the humanitarian ceasefire. And this situation continues to escalate, as some would say. We also have approved in our Senate Foreign Intelligence, Senate and Foreign Intelligence, they approved the funding for more missiles for Israel's Iron Dome. I don't know if you saw that today.
Oh, yeah.
And I was BP Earthwatch, and I had a few chats, and he was posting some information the last few nights in our interactive chat room about the cost of each missile that is fired in defense or responding to a rocket fired into Israel. And it's costly. You're not talking, anything cheap. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars per missile to defend incoming rockets from hitting the population centers. So I think it was $225 million the United States in aid to Israel for their Iron Dome defense system. Also,
in that same vein, and it's interesting because there are a lot of angles to this. The Times of Israel, they were live blogging events as they unfolded throughout Friday, throughout their Friday, which is now Saturday, of course, their time. The 25th day of Operation Protective Edge. The fact, and I'm not even sure we mentioned that the U.S. and the UN announced this 72-hour truce. But the fact of the matter is that it just never happened. And you can count the numbers of times that the ceasefires. You can count the number of ceasefires. And the bottom line is there will be no peace over there. We know that. There were 5 IDF soldiers who had been killed, or they were killed late Thursday in a mortar attack inside the Israeli border. Now, making that a total of 63 soldiers and 3 civilians killed on the Israeli side after 25 days of fighting. Now, according to the published accounts in Gaza, the Gaza health officials put the death toll there at over 1,500. Now, of course, Israel says that number, that 1,500 number, represents Hamas fighters. Now, I got some emails today, and it's interesting. There are people who are who have folks. We are pro-Israel. At least speaking for me, I am pro-Israel.
For the people of Israel, yes.
Of course.
The governments, that's another story, as they are all involved in this New World Order plot in one way or another. But for the people, the regular citizens, we were behind them 100%. We're behind citizens, peaceful citizens, no matter where they are in the world. We are with them and behind them. Governments aside.
Okay, but no, I'm going to go through this one more time. I think it's necessary for people to understand. If you've ever sat at a picnic across from a socialist, a Democrat, progressive, whatever, who just is up in arms about Israel, about their activities, their right to exist, and how that land was carved out based on a peace treaty. I've heard all of these arguments. And of course, it always comes back to, well, Israel, the Jews are the occupiers of this Arab land, and they've got no right to it. Well, and that's the statement of the Arabs, really. Well, now hold on a minute here. Let's take a look at this. None of that is true. And of course, their statement is, if Israel would just give up land, of course there would be peace. There are a number of reasons that Israel has the right to the land in which they occupy, and more. Just very quickly, if you look at the evidence from, the archaeological evidence by itself, the archaeological evidence supports the fact that Israelis have had a presence there for over 3,000 years. You can find coins. You can find buried cities, the pottery, the culture. Look, there have been other people who have been there, but the Israelis predate those other people. They've been present in that land consistently for 3,000 years. They predate any other civilization around today. Some people, the Philistines are not Arabs, or not the current day Arabs, so forget about that. They don't have, the Arabs do not have this unbroken line of succession that extends the Israelis have. Even the Egyptians. By the way, they're not the same ethnic blend of Egyptians that were that we're talking about 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. They're primarily an Arab people. The land's called Egypt, but they're not the same ethnic background, ethnic stock of the old Egyptians of the ancient world. And if you look at the history, Israel's right to the land. And I know it sounds redundant, perhaps, painful to go through this, but once again, if you ever find yourself sitting across the table from someone, you can be well armed with this information. History supports Israel's, the Jews' right to the land totally, completely, and without any ambiguity. There was an Israel right up to the time of the Roman Empire. The Romans conquered the land. Israel had no homeland, although the Jews were allowed to live there. They were driven from the land in two ways, in two dispersions. One occurred, and everyone should know this, in 70 A.D., and the other in 135 A.D. But there was always a Jewish presence in the land. Of course, the Turks, who took over about 700 years ago and ruled the land until World War I, had control. Then, of course, the land was conquered by the British, but the Turks entered World War I on the side of Germany. So now the British knew, and folks, this is history, but if you paid attention, of course, I was going to say if you paid attention to history class, it probably wasn't taught in history class. The British knew they had to do something to punish Turkey for their involvement with Germany, and also to break up the empire that was going to be part of the whole effort of Germany in World War I, which we're seeing the resurgence of this Ottoman Empire. So the British sent troops against the Turks in the Holy Land. So you can see how this had shaped up, okay, up to World War I. You can also get into the history a little bit more by looking at one of the generals who was leading the British armies, Allenby. Allenby was a Bible-believing Christian. He carried a Bible with him everywhere he went. Folks, you probably know the story. He knew the significance, the biblical significance of Jerusalem. Interestingly, the night before Allenby attacked Jerusalem to drive out the Turks, he prayed to God. He prayed that God would allow him to capture the city without doing any damage to any of the holy places. That day, the day of his attack, Allenby sent World War I biplanes over Jerusalem to do a reconnaissance mission. Now, you have to understand that the Turks had at the time never seen an airplane. Picture this in your mind. So there they were flying around. They looked in the sky and saw these machines. They didn't know what they were. They were terrified by them. So they dared not fight against a prophet or prophecy from God. What happened? Well, Allenby walked into Jerusalem without firing a shot. He was able to take the city. The Turks ran. Then they were told that they were going to be opposed by a man named Allenby the next day, which means in their language a man sent from God or a prophet of God or from God. They dare not fight against a prophet from God. So the next morning, when this British general went to take Jerusalem, he took it over very easily and occupied it without a problem. This is the historical part. The homeland that Britain said it would set aside consisted all of what is now Israel. But going back to World War I, and of course the Balfour Declaration and all of this, the land that Britain said it would set aside promised to give the Jews 1917 involved quite a bit of real estate. In the beginning, there was some Arab support for this action, actually. The Arabs actually said, okay, fine. We will coexist. Because, see, at the time, there was not a huge Arab population in the land. And there was a reason for that. The land wasn't able to sustain a large population. There was really no development it needed to handle those people, and nobody really wanted it anyway. It was considered at the time to be worthless. Folks, this is important stuff to know. And y'all remember Mark Twain, right? Samuel Clemens took a tour of what was then known as Palestine back in 1867. He described that area where Jerusalem is now, and think of it today, how it's built up. He said, a desolate country whose soil is rich enough, but is given over to wholly to weeds. A silent, mournful expanse. Mark Twain continued, he says, we never saw a human being on the whole route. There was hardly a tree or a shrub anywhere. It was desolate. Even the olives and the cactus, or cacti, perhaps. Those fast friends of a worthless soil had almost deserted the country. Those are the words of Mark Twain. So, where was this great nation of Palestine that the Arabs today talk about? It didn't exist. It wasn't there. Not then. It never existed. You see how we've been lied to throughout our entire lives? All it takes is a little bit of research. The Palestinians were not there. Oh, Palestine was a region on a map. It was named by the Romans, but at that time it was under the control of Turkey. Like I said, there was no large bunch of people there because the land wouldn't support them. So this, by the way, the Indian Royal Commission created by the British made, it quotes an account of the conditions on the central plain along the Mediterranean Sea back in 1913. Now think about this. 1913, here's what the Palestinian Royal Commission said. The road leading from Gaza to the north was only a summer track, suitable for transport by camels or cart. No orange groves, no orchards or vineyards were to be seen anywhere. Houses were mud. Schools didn't exist. The western part toward the sea, well, that was a desert. The villages in this area were very few, thinly populated, and again, made of houses made of mud. The villages that were there, many of them were deserted by their inhabitants. That was in 1913. Now, the French author, Voltaire, you can sound pretty smart if you're sitting at the family reunion next week or next month, or in a couple of weeks, whatever, and you've got that obnoxious brother-in-law telling you, hey, well, Israel shouldn't do gay. Israel should, they're bombing, it's genocide, you know. Hey, Uncle Bob, let me explain to you about the French author Voltaire. Who? Yeah, Voltaire. He described Palestine as a hopeless and dreary place. In short, under the Turks, it was just a neglected land. They couldn't build, they couldn't create anything. It's a historic fact, folks. The nation became populated by the Jews. And it only prospered when the Jews came back and began to reclaim it. Don't you find it a little bit odd that Barack Hussein Obama, has given so much acclaim to the Arabs here in the United States? So much acclaim. Oh, my goodness. America has just been so blessed by the Arabs, by the Muslims in this country. They've done so much for the fabric of this country. I think that's what he said. Well, he supports the Arab-Palestinian terrorist attacks, essentially, in the Middle East. Did you know, by the way, Saudi Arabia was not created, didn't exist until 1913. Did you know that Lebanon, as it stands, it was not? It didn't exist until 1920. Iraq didn't exist until 1932. Kids aren't taught this anymore. We've forgotten it, if you're my age, which is of the age of rock or dust, I guess. At least that's what my son tells me. Syria wasn't even created as a country until 1941. The borders of Jordan were established in 1946. Oh, and Kuwait, a little piece of a nation, that was the subject of the 1990-91 Desert Storm. That didn't exist until 1961. These are the nations that tell us that Israel is only a recent creation. And because they're just a recent creation via the Balfour Declaration and the mandates of the British and the post effects of World War I, of course, that they've got no right to exist. Oh yeah? Okay, so Saudi Arabia, that wasn't created until 1913. It would do in part with the Western intelligence at that time, which predates the CIA, but yet was part of it, and Aramco and all that. Lebanon, 1920, Iraq, 1932, Syria, 1941. Yeah, they're very well established, as one would say, aren't they? They did not exist as countries. They were all under the control of the Ottoman Empire, under the Turks. And guess what? That's where it's headed. This new Ottoman Empire, this caliphate, Islamic caliphate. That's what they're trying to do now. And Obama is behind it. And of course, we know Israel gained its independence in 1948. So and I could go on and on and on, but folks, I just think it's very important to understand the history behind this. So, in terms of the attacks, based on the fact that Israel does not have a right to exist where they're at, bullpucky. Yeah, I just laid it all out for you. And it's not complicated. People say, "Oh, well, the Middle East it's a very complicated issue." I just went through it, and if I can understand it, anyone can understand it. How complicated is that? Really? It's complicated? No. You got the Arab Muslims firing rockets into Israel, using their civilian population as human shields. And the Israelis affecting themselves. Pretty damn complicated, I'd say. Whoops, I cussed. I'll get about 5 or 6 emails on that. Sorry about that. Pretty doggone complicated. It's not complicated. The fact that they're also, and they have been, a great roadblock to Muslim terrorists. See, people think that because the 9/11 attacks, by the way, were there's questions about them, and of course, how it's impossible, really, the way for them to happen the way they happen. So people automatically dismiss the Arab component or the Muslim component to it. No, there was a Muslim component to it. Just not the way they said it was. But the fact is, there would be a lot more Muslim. Did you hear what I said? Muslim attacks if it weren't for Israel. They act as a roadblock, a buffer, a speed bump in the road over there in the Middle East. So I just thought I'd clear that up, and I didn't want to take too much of the part or too much of that. But so the next time you sit down over hot dogs and a keg of a beer or iced tea or whatever, got your uncle or brother-in-law saying, "Well, it's all because." Insert idiotic statement there. There you go.
Thanks for the the research and then you put into that and explaining that's very interesting. Back to the Middle East and the fighting between Gaza and Israel, I found this interesting article out of CNN. This time, Gaza fighting is proxy war for entire Middle East. The conflict raging in Gaza is different this time. While Hamas rocket attacks and Israel's military actions may look familiar, they're taking place against a whole new backdrop. This is unprecedented in the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict, says CNN Ali Yones, an analyst who has covered the region for decades. Most Arab states are actively supporting Israel against the Palestinians, not even shy about it or doing so discreetly. It's a joint Arab-Israeli war consisting of Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia against other Arabs, the Palestinians as represented by Hamas.
But and ladies and gentlemen, there is complicity by Israel, by the government of Israel in this. Please understand the fact that just like, for example, America, we're all in the country of America who are American citizens, born and bred here, that of citizenship. We call ourselves Americans, right? But does that mean that we agree with the wholesale slaughter exported by America? Of course not. Apply the same logic to Israel. But let's take it back. So in no way, shape, or form am I or Joe or are we individually or collectively agreeing with the government, the leadership of Israel. Hands down. Anyway, any more than we agree with the leadership of this country. But these are just the facts. But who's behind, Joe? Who is behind this ultimately? This war by proxy. You said the magic phrase, war by proxy. Who's ultimately behind this?
This goes on to state, the outcomes of the fighting will likely be the end of the old Arab alliance system that has even nominally supported the Palestinians and their goal of establishing a Palestinian state. The Israel-Hamas conflict has laid bare the new divides of the Middle East. And it goes on to state that it is no longer the Muslims against the Jews. It is now the extremists, aka the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, Hezbollah, and their backers Iran, Qatar, and Turkey, against Israel and the more moderate Muslims, including Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia.
Okay, go ahead.
It says it's a proxy war for control or dominance in the Middle East, CNN Fareed Zakari had stated. He says that this Israel-Hamas conflict has laid bare the new divides of the Middle East. It is no longer the Muslims against the Jews. Now it's the extremists, or Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranian backers, Qatar and Turkey, against the Israeli and more moderate Muslim states, including Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. It's a proxy war for control or dominance in the Middle East, says Fareed Zakari from CNN.
Right. And Fareed, this is where you and I could sit down and if we turn our chairs, if we sit and look at one another, we could talk about it one way. We turn our chairs a little bit, there's another angle to look at it. That is a very interesting statement for many reasons. But the bottom line here, it's a war by proxy. This is what we're seeing take place in in the Middle East, folks, is a Western intelligence. It's at its mid-level management section. We'll call it a Western intelligence operation gone rogue, criminal cabal within the Western intelligence circles of the United States, Great Britain, France, performing the agenda, the objectives of Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabist doctrine. This is the George W. Bush, the George H.W. Bush, the Dulles brothers, the all throughout history, insert name here, parade of people supporting the Saudi agenda, with now King Tut, the emperor, the renegade-in-chief himself, the Bauer, who shows us his bony protuberance while he bows into the lap of the Saudi king. It is their agenda that we are performing. And as W had said yesterday, I wonder how many men, women, in the families of the men and women who served over in Iraq and Afghanistan in this war really feel. I wonder how they really feel about the war when they come back without a limb. And you watch, if you watch Fox News every Sunday morning, I visit my father-in-law, who's not in the best of health, and we just talk, or I just listen, and he always says Fox News on in the background, always. And during each visit, of course, the commercial for the Wounded Warrior Project comes on, and you see horribly disfigured soldiers, men and women, horribly. It should make everyone angry that this war, the war against Iraq, the Afghanistan, that was started under the George W. Bush administration. I'm not talking politics here. I'm talking globalism here. It should make everyone angry. What did they die for? What did our men and women die for? What were they horribly disfigured for? What was the agenda? Who's behind it? When you say war by proxy, who is? Yeah, is anyone getting tired of being proxies? I think you should be. And who's behind it? It's the very same people that were involved in Benghazi in the weapons shipment operation, the arms running operation. I'm sorry, the training of the ISIS people who are now ISIS, and who are now killing the very people we said we'd stand by. But by the way, while I'm on this subject, let me just say a few more words about this. When W called in yesterday, of course, he was very upset and rattled by the fact that, yeah, he has. Can I say this? I'll just say it this way. He knows people who were with the very people that were being killed. And some of them were being killed. Okay, let me rephrase that. Some of his people. Look, if you watch the video on Waleed's site, Shoebat, SHOEBAT, if you watch that video of the rivers of blood where these guys, the ISIS people, were taking and executing en masse, these Iraqi police force soldiers, if you will, whatever you want to call them, and then shooting others and then tossing their bodies into the river, creating a river of blood. If you look at that, you see Americans, we told those very people that were getting shot in the head that we'd stand behind them. Don't worry, we'll be there with you throughout all of this. Russia, on the other hand, says, hey, don't believe them. Guys, don't believe them. Who's the bad guy? Now, I don't want to deify Putin. That's not my intent. But seriously, who is the bad guy here? When Obama says, well, okay, when Bush goes in, says, well, mission accomplished. What in the hell are you talking about, mission accomplished? What mission? What, destabilizing Iraq as much as Obama destabilized Libya, Egypt, etc.? When are the veterans who are? No wonder the veterans are classified as risks, security risks. Because if I risked my life over there, or my father, my mother, if I was young enough, of course, or my sister, brother, or my child died, yeah, you better believe I'd be a security risk. But see, the very people that we said we would stand by are being executed en masse. Saigon. Remember Saigon? How many people out there remember Saigon? Vietnam. What happened there? If you're not old enough to remember Vietnam, and when was it, April of 75, the helicopters. And then what happened afterwards, the killing fields, Cambodia, where doctors, lawyers, dentists, anyone with glasses, anyone of intelligence were killed. Because why? Because we just said, yeah, we're just going to step aside. What do you think's happening here? History repeats itself. The very same thing is happening here, except the Muslims here, they're not as nice as Pol Pot was. Think about that statement. Some people might say, well, Pol what? What kind of pot? Folks, please study history. And please understand what we're seeing here is exponentially worse than Saigon. We've betrayed an entire nation. Oh, and when you think when they're done with the very people we trained and helped, when they're done with them and concurrent with them, they're coming for the Christians and the Jews over there. And you might say, well, that's over there. No, it's going to happen in Europe, and it's going to happen in the United States. They're coming for us. And it's by design.
Once again, very well said. I have a number of interesting other news items to get into, and I have a piece on tolerance I want to talk about, as I've researched into the differences of tolerance and intolerance and what we see today, and how it has been misconstrued, and really what they call tolerance is now really intolerant, and we're going to get into that in the second hour. This article of news from the Examiner, where our friend Ken Chorjan is a writer and contributor to. This is not his piece, but from July 23rd, 2014. This is right up the alley for Tom Horn and Steve. It says, Vatican preparing statement on extraterrestrial life. And I know this may sound like it's some hoax article, but it's not. It says Pope Francis is reportedly preparing a major world statement about extraterrestrial life and its theological implication. Rosanna Ubenel from Voxy News today reported, due to the advances in scientific detection methods for the discovery of extraterrestrial life, Pope Francis wants to be ready with a statement about first contact. The report details have yet to be officially announced, but the Vatican's interest in extraterrestrial life is well documented through recent astrobiology conferences the Vatican Observatory has sponsored or participated in. And we all know what the observatory the Vatican owns in, I think it's New Mexico, I believe, called Lucifer. But it goes on to say that the Vatican scientific interest in extraterrestrial life was published for the first time in 2008, when it heard of the Vatican Observatory's Gabriel Funes, also a Jesuit, gave an interview to the Vatican newspaper. He made a series of stunning statements about how extraterrestrial life is likely to be more ethically evolved than humans and will be welcomed as brothers. In fact, this is not in the article, but the Pope made a statement not too near past about how if we were visited by an extraterrestrials, how they would baptize them. And I just find it interesting, the timing of this article, as we see things escalating in Bible prophecy that are, equal to no other time in history. The escalation and the rapidness of how things are changing and how they are fitting right into the Lord's word, what he would said would happen and how it would happen. And to prepare people to understand that any type of quote-unquote extraterrestrial life that is announced by the Vatican, our governments, or anybody else is a false, is a hoax, is demonic or evil. Only the Lord is coming back for his own. There is no other Savior. There will be, nor has there been, any other Savior but the Lord Jesus Christ. And any imposter, whether seeming to be, claiming to be so, and being able to perform false works and false miracles to convince others as so, that it is anything but the truth and a deception. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because we keep hearing, Coast to Coast does many shows about the possibility of extraterrestrial life, and George Norrie doesn't seem to have any kind of belief system, and I'm not bringing him down for that, I'm just stating it. So there's no, real biblical references or other historically accurate references incorporated into what's being said on that show sometimes. And a lot of people do believe that there are some type of alien saviors, or what they deem star children, as Paul McGuire has explained many times, that will come and be our saviors. And when you see the biggest Christian religious institution not only claiming it to be so, but embracing it, it is a very dangerous thing and can fool many people. And for those who may be new listeners, I just wanted to make that clear that we must not be fooled by anything that they try to bring about as some kind of Messiah, because when the Lord returns, we will know it. Everybody will know it, as we will be changed in a moment. The whole world will change. Nobody will have time to Facebook or tweet it. It won't be, hidden for certain regions or peoples, as the Bible says. When they say, "Lo, here's the Christ in the desert," don't go, as the Bible says. It says, "For as lightning comes out of the east to the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be." And I just want to make sure people understand that with all these different TV shows promoting extraterrestrial life, like ancient astronaut theorists who claim that Jesus was actually an extraterrestrial, and all these false claims. I just wanted to make sure that people understood that. But when we come back in the other side of the hour on this first broadcast of August, we're going to take some calls. We're going to get into a few more headlines, and we're going to talk about what tolerance really means versus what it's being purported in our news today to mean, and some other important headlines also, as we'll be back after these short messages. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this first day of August, Friday, 2014, with Doug and Joe Hagmann. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour 2 of this Friday, August 1st edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Once again, thank you so much, Ken, for that wonderful new audio. Kind of creepy, but we like it anyway. It is a pleasure to have so many people helping and supporting through prayer, through any way they can contribute to help us out. And the new tunes, we always love new tunes, so thank you very much. Anything, Dad, you want to jump in on with this in this hour before I get into the tolerance?
Yeah, I want to just go into a little bit what I was saying about what happened at the White House last night. Just very briefly, because I think this is important, folks. It's important for everyone to know what's going on in the House of the People. It's important to know, and this is a shout-out to Rush Limbaugh, a shout-out to Sean Hannity, a shout-out to everyone who said that the eligibility, the background, the pedigree, the information about Barack Hussein Obama, it really didn't matter. It was the distraction. Remember that? You recall that, everyone, right? It matters. Yeah. It matters it matters a lot. In fact, it strikes to the very heart of the matter, and to the very people on the various politically conservative message boards who made fun of and labeled with pejorative term birthers, those of us who, frankly, don't know who Barack Hussein Obama is. And the fact of the matter is, we don't know who he is. As an investigator for 28 years, almost 29 now, I could tell you this, that everything I've seen points to a Manchurian candidate in the White House. Well, let me back up. Everything I've seen suggests that he is not who he says he is. Frankly, with what has been presented, I don't know when he was born. I don't know where he was born. I don't know what his real name is. And I do believe that there's a sufficient prima facie evidence to suggest he's using more than one Social Security number. And I do believe that he has involvement with intelligence agencies, specifically the U.S. intelligence CIA. And I also believe that he is a member in good standing of the pseudo-religious political secret society group known as Subud. That is not to be understated. However, moving along, as he is sitting in the White House, he brings in Katy Perry for the Special Olympics ceremony last night. Well, with everything going on, why should we be concerned about that? Because, folks, there is look, Katy Perry, in the event you don't know who she is, you've got last night a dinner for the physically challenged, for the special needs children. Here they are inside the White House, the House of the People. And among all of the celebrities, Katy Perry was elevated by Obama over all of the other celebrities there. Well, Katy Perry at the Grammys back in January essentially performed an Illuminati-themed occult ritual right in front of our very eyes. She dressed up as a witch. Her performance included a Knights Templar cross emblazoned across her chest, a beast with Moloch-type horns, dancers in dark robes with devil horns protruding from their heads, and pole dancing with a broom. That's who the renegade-in-chief elevated in front of our special needs children last night, to everyone's delight. And of course, if you recall at the Grammys, at the end of that ceremony, Katy Perry was burned at the stake as she ended her performance. All of this hardcore occult symbolism was intent. It was by design. And if you viewed the attention to the specific detail at that performance alone, you had to know that somebody put a whole lot of time, energy, thought into it. So she was performing a ritual at the Grammys. This is important stuff because we have, if you look at the bigger picture, and people will say, well, you're absolutely off your rocker, you're nuts, you're crazy. And frankly, I didn't believe this stuff. I got to tell you right flat out, folks, if you had told me 10 years ago about this, yeah, just go away. Go away. You're crazy. But when we have guests like John Cameron on talking about serial killers, demonic in nature, satanic rituals, and you sit down over breakfast or brunch with Russ Dizdar, as Joe and I did, and you hear what's going on out there. This is not for the faint of heart. So when we say there is a spiritual war taking place, there is a spiritual war taking place. He might say, well, you don't have to convince me of that. Whoa, wait a minute. I think we do. I really do. Judging by some of the emails, I think we do. Oh, no, that's too far out for me. folks, when we talk about the New World Order, people have a tendency to think it's only just the secular system of governance that's communist in nature. Oh, that is true. But it's much more. It's deeply rooted in the occult. In every event, every single event that elevates the occult like this, I don't know, they're going to have to take a team of exorcists and a giant fire hose and a whole lot of disinfectant into the White House. That's right, you heard me. And no, that's not a racial remark. That's that speaks directly to the spiritual side of things. So Katy Perry was elevated last night amid the the crimson red lights in the White House. But don't worry, folks, because her Republican mother was there. Don't forget her father was a minister, is a minister. Greg Jackson, when I sent a call out to Greg Jackson, he listening. Unfortunately, he's one ear and listening the other ear, or the other. He's physically at a rehearsal dinner tonight. God bless you, Greg. but he so he's unable to join us to make a comment about this. But he said this, and I can quote him on this. He said, when I sent out the request, and I mentioned about Katy Perry, her appearance at the Special Olympics children's dinner at the White House. He said, I'm not surprised, given the fact that Perry is obviously demon-possessed. So she's in good company at the White House with her anti-Christian president. President, of course, in quotation marks. You can quote me on that. So why is this important? Folks, everything that you see today at the uppermost levels of government, at the uppermost levels of corporate, the technically fascism, with the government and the corporations combining together. Ladies and gentlemen, it is steeped in the occult. It's one big Bohemian Grove type of operation. Again, I don't expect you to believe me on this, and you might think I'm overstating the case, and you might think that this is hyped up a little bit, but when you start looking into this, and I would urge everyone to look into this, look at the Illuminati symbolism, look at the New World Order symbolism, look at the occult symbology that we see. This is the driving force behind the leadership of this country. This is why we're not going to fix the country through the midterm elections, because it's a spiritual problem, not a political problem. So, Joe, that's all I wanted to say, and I wanted to just to make mention of the fact that you've got this Barry Soetoro in the White House without papers. Oh, he'll ask for yours, but he doesn't have them. Well, he does. But they're all photoshopped or digitized. Do you really know who Obama is? And Michelle, that is. Sorry about that. Huh. His wife? Or his significant other? I don't know. So if you think for one moment that all will be fine, well and good after, of course, after the conservatives, so-called conservatives, take the Senate and take the House in November, if that is to be the case. Wow. If you do not factor in the spiritual in this, good night. Literally good night. But
and it's all encompassing. It's the entertainment industry, the music industry. I thank the Lord that I no longer care about any of those things that I did once when I was younger. And
let me just tell this story. I would take this is back when there was cassette tapes instead of CDs or DVDs. When he was younger, I'd go in his room. I'd find some rap, really some pathetic rap tape. I'd throw it out, destroy it.
It got to the point where I would hide the tapes outside in bags, so when I would walk to school, I could grab them on my way out.
I told him I was going to burn his house down. I'd burn the house down because seriously, I said I'm going to burn the house down. So he hid the cassettes outside,
And I remember telling you that I'd never stop listening to rap music. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was pretty much. I thought you were a lost cause. Of course, and I shouldn't say that. I don't. No way.
I kind of was.
Well, no, in no way am I trying to demean you at all, and that's not what. But I felt like my endeavors were like I felt like I couldn't do anything right, And those parents who are listening, if you've got teenagers, you might know what I'm talking about. It's like every time you turn around, you just can't do anything right. Oh my word! But you can threaten, you can ground them, you can do this and that, and it just comes back in spades, and just it just I mean, this is real life, folks. I mean, this is real life, isn't it? I mean, the life of a parent. And if you're a single parent, God bless you. I got emails. In fact, I was reading some emails today. One man, a single parent of 3. Another man, a single parent. I don't know of how many, at least one, of course. And a woman, a single parent. I'm thinking, what a job to have. And then trying to work and support the children. And of course, folks, you've got to know, and then I'm going to shut up here, and Joe, you can take it, but you've got to know that from the Leave It to Beaver days, from the Father Knows Best days, when you had the perfect, or what you thought was the perfect family, where the mother was in the dress every day, the dad wore the suit every day, went to the office, and the mother was always in the kitchen, always home when Junior got home from school, and when the Beeve got home, and Wally. Okay. The perfect nuclear family. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen? Do yourself a favor. Do some study, do some research on television as those shows progressed, or I shouldn't say progressed, as television evolved from shows, we'll say like the shows of the 1950s into the Brady Bunch. You might think I'm totally wacky, but research the Illuminati significance of the Brady Bunch, the Tavistock influence of the Brady Bunch. Again, if you had told me this 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago, I would have laughed. And you can laugh at me, seriously. But do the research, the facts you'll find will just really, it's incredible. Tavistock Institute, the Illuminati programming, the neurolinguistic, the mind programming, the programming that the entire nation was under. Do I sound like a loon?
No.
No, I do. Seriously, if you just, I can just imagine somebody just turning on in the show and hearing me talk about the Brady Bunch being the product of some Tavistock or Illuminati or mind control thing, and you know, boy, that'd be the last time they probably heard that, or last time they listened to us.
Indoctrination into, you know, accepting that divorce is a normal part of life in one aspect, and then there's a lot of things. I mean, I never really watched the Brady Bunch. Wasn't old enough to have it around when I was younger, I guess, or didn't pay attention to it. But the TV, you know, through entertainment, the subtlety of it, of the evil that it introduces, as you stated in many other occasions, how it started off, you know, couples that would sleep in separate beds. You know, they wouldn't show, you know, people's belly buttons, little things like that, to where we are today. You know, it didn't happen overnight. It happened through these subtle introductions of varying lifestyles that were contrary to the Ten Commandments and the morals of Christianity.
And you know something else, Joe? And I know that we weren't planning on talking about this with everything that's going on, but have you noticed, ladies and gentlemen, if you got cable, and we have satellite here for the overseas news in the studio. Frankly, it's all we have is for that purpose. But I am so frustrated. Dating naked. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I don't have a cable, but we had a caller call in and say there was 2 new reality type shows that had to do with nudity, being naked and afraid, I think was one of them, and dating naked was another one. And I saw a commercial
selling naked.
Yeah, something like that. And I saw when I was in Buffalo with my wife on our anniversary, I did see a commercial for that, and we talked about how crazy that was. And it just makes me even more happy I don't have cable to have to see commercials like that. But you know, how much more downhill can we go from here? I mean, is there going to be pornography on ABC News?
Oh. No, you know what? You're going to see Christian executions on cable. I'm serious. I'm absolutely serious. You are, folks. It's going to get to that point. You will see the execution of people on television. Was it the Hunger Games? I don't know. I don't watch movies. I really have a dislike. I think the last movie I saw was in the theater was Star Wars or something. I don't know. Or Independence Day. I fell asleep through that.
Yep, I was there. We were young, and we went to see Independence Day. Probably the loudest movie I was ever at in a movie theater. Eardrums were bleeding when we left, and somehow he snored through the whole movie, and that was funny.
Well, you know, you work for a living, you get tired, and you have a moment to sit down, and what do? You fall asleep.
Well, to be honest, getting older now, but I don't go to movies too often, but when I do, I remember at least out of the last 5 times, I think 3 of them I fell asleep throughout the movie, so I understand.
Well, I got one real kind of upbeat or kind of funny story to tell real quick, folks. When I did an internship back in the late 70s with the volunteer fire department, where I for my paramedic designation with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So we used to have 24 on, 24 off shifts, and we had an extremely busy 24 hours. And I mean extremely busy. And I think this is the winter of 77, 78. I don't really remember when it was, but here's the nugget of the story. You know those huge volunteer fire sirens, and if you live in a rural area, you probably still have them, where they go off at noon or they go off when a fire call. Do they still have those? I don't know, but they used to have them. I was in a building, after it was 36 hours of just like nonstop running, and it was cold and tired. And I got back, and there was a couch in this break room. That above the break room sat the very siren that went off when there was a call, when there was a call. And those things are loud. I slept right through it. I slept right through that puppy. Now, I don't know of too many people that can do that. But anyway, so Independence Day was nothing compared to that. All right, Joe, let's move on.
All right. We're going to take calls at 661-244-9839 in about 10 or 15 minutes. I just want to speak on tolerance for a minute. And a great write-up I found called Stand to Reason, The Intolerance of Tolerance. And it goes on to starting by stating the modern myth that holds true tolerance consists of neutrality. It is one of the most entrenched assumptions of society committed to relativism. It goes on to talk about how a tolerance is comprised of three elements, but it says tolerant persons occupies neutral ground, a place of complete impartiality where each person is permitted to decide for himself. No judgments allowed, no forcing personal views. Each takes a neutral posture towards another's convictions. It goes on to state there are three elements of tolerance. Most people are confused about what tolerance is. According to Webster's New World Dictionary, Second College Edition, the word tolerant means to allow or permit, to recognize and respect others' beliefs and practices without sharing them, to bear or put up with something not necessarily liked. So it involves three elements: permitting or allowing, conduct or point of view one disagrees with, and third, while respecting the person in the process. It says, notice that we can't tolerate someone unless we disagree with them. This is critical. We do not tolerate people who share our views. They're on our side. There's nothing to put up with. Tolerance is reserved for those we think are wrong. The author writes, this is an essential element of tolerance, disagreement. It has completely been lost in the modern distortion of the concept. Nowadays, if you think someone is wrong, you're called intolerant. Now, these are, a lot of people might understand the difference between tolerance and intolerance, but when I read this, it really opened up my eyes to a better understanding of what we're seeing happen today and how it is happening. Because, the point made that tolerance, you're, in order to be tolerant with someone, you have to disagree with them.
Yeah, and folks, so let me just say this. What Joe is going through here, I looked at the notes and I read them and I looked at what his research is. This is so important because this tells you everything you need to know about the right-left argument, about the media arguments, about the even the family disagreements that you might have. So I would urge everyone to really listen carefully because you can relate to what he's talking about.
Yeah, so the essential element of tolerance is disagreement. This presents a curious problem. One must first think another is wrong in order to exercise tolerance toward him, yet doing so brings an accusation of intolerance. It's a catch-22. According to this approach, tolerance is impossible. The three phases of tolerance. Adding to the confusion is the fact that tolerance could apply to different things, persons, behaviors, or ideas, and rules that are different for each. Tolerance of persons might be called civility, can be equated to the word respect. This is the classical definition of tolerance, the freedom to express one's ideas without fear of reprisal. We respect those who hold different beliefs than our own, treating them courteously and allowing their views in a place in the public discourse. We may strongly disagree with their ideas and vigorously contend against them in the public square, but we still show respect for the persons in spite of the difference. Note that respect is according to the person here. Whether his behavior should be tolerated is an entirely different issue. The second sense of tolerance is liberty, to act. Called tolerance of our behavior, our laws demonstrate that man may believe what he likes. He usually has the liberty to express those beliefs, but many may not behave as he likes. Some behavior is immoral or a threat to the common good. Rather than being tolerated, it is restricted by law. In Lincoln's words, there is no right to do wrong. Liberty to express those beliefs, but he may not behave like he likes. Some behavior is immoral, a threat to the common good rather than being tolerated. Sorry, I repeated that. Tolerance of persons must also be distinguished from tolerance of ideas. A tolerance of persons requires that each person's views get heard, not that all views are equal with worth or merit or truth. The view that no person's ideas are better than truer and others is irrational and absurd. To argue that some views are false, immoral, or just plain silly does not violate any meaningful standard of tolerance. Historically, our culture emphasized tolerance of all persons, but never tolerance of all behavior. This is a critical distinction because in current rhetoric of relativism, the concept of tolerance is frequently advocated for behavior, premarital sex, abortion, homosexuality, use of pornography, etc. People ought to be able to behave the way they want within the broad moral limits the argument goes. Ironically, though, there is little tolerance for the expression of contrary ideas on issues of morality and religion. If one advocates a differing view, he is censored. The tolerance issue has thus gone topsy-turvy. Tolerate most behavior, but don't tolerate opposing beliefs about those behaviors. Contrary moral opinions are labeled as imposing your views on others. Instead of hearing, I respect your view, those who differ politically incorrect ways are told they are bigoted, narrow-minded, and intolerant. And
if I can just stop you right here, just for a second, only because of this, folks. And if you haven't, I'm gonna give Greg Jackson's book another plug at pre-sale. It's at pre-sale stage right now. Please. I've got a will made up, and I've got a lockbox. You know, one of those cheap lock boxes. My mortgage is in there. My second mortgage is in there. My third mortgage. Well, you get the idea, along with my will. And you know, with my will attached by a rubber band is Greg Jackson's book, 40 Things to Teach Your Children Before You Die. I've got a Post-it note on where I want it to go. Please get that book. But you just spoke about being narrow-minded, Joe, right?
And I'm going to go into intellectual cowardice next. But
well, okay. Here's what Greg Jackson says about being narrow-minded, and I'm going to shut up, okay? Because I think when as soon as you said that, I thought, man, this is really key. Chapter 22, or point number 22 of the 40 things, is you should be narrow-minded. And I'll be brief, Joe, not to cut into your time here.
No, go ahead.
But I think this is so important. Folks, every one of us as Christians, every one of us as rational human beings should be narrow-minded to the extent that the world will say that you should not be narrow-minded and that you must be tolerant of all beliefs, because there isn't just one right way. There are many right ways. I'm paraphrasing here from his book. But everybody's got to decide for themselves what's right. You see, what's right is relative. It's the moral relativism. It's the morals that are wrapped up in bungee cords, so to speak. But God says this: enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Now, that's a reference to Matthew 7, chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. So God's word alone is the basis for all the truth. See, look, you're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be persecuted, perhaps, for basing your values, your beliefs, and decisions in life firmly on God's authoritative and inerrant word. But remember that the one true God has called you to be narrow-minded and to enter through the narrow gate. That's all I wanted to say. When you mentioned narrow-minded, that immediately came to mind, and that's from 40 Things to Teach Your Children Before You Die, Greg Jackson. Definitely pre-order. We want we want to really put this on the bestseller list. The reason for that is to upset the progressive social democrats. Go ahead.
And the author of this article on tolerance wrote an example, given a case example on the tolerant versus intolerance we see today in our societies. She writes, case in point was an attack made in my community paper on Christians who were uncomfortable with social pressure to approve of homosexuality. I wrote the following letter to the editor to show how modern notion of tolerance had been twisted into a vice instead of a virtue. Dear editor, I'm consistently amazed to see how intolerant South Bay residents are to moral views other than their own. Last week, letters about homosexualities were case in point. One writer even suggested that your publication censor alternative opinions. The narrow-minded, self-righteous attitude about sexual ethics is hypocritical. They challenge what they view as hate, which used to be called morality, with caustic and vitriolic attacks. They condemn censure by asking for censorship. They accuse others of intolerance and bigotry, then berate those same people for taking a view contrary to their own. Why is someone attacked so forcibly simply for affirming moral guidelines about sex that have held us in good stead for thousands of years? Not only that, the objections are self-defeating. The writers imply that everyone should be allowed to do as they believe, what they want, and that no one should be permitted to force their viewpoint on others, but that their viewpoint, which is immediately attempt to force on you, your readers, in an abusive way. These opposing beliefs were referred to in print as bigots. It goes on to say those with opposing beliefs were referred to as bigots, lacking courage, disrespectful, ignorant, abominable, fearful, indecent, on par with the KKK, etc. Can you believe it? Intolerant. Why don't we abandon all this nonsense about tolerance and open-mindedness? It's misleading because each side has a point of view that thinks it's correct. The real issue is about what kind of morality our society should encourage, whether that morality is based on fact and sound reasoning or empty rhetoric. And it goes on from here in the article saying, most of what passes for tolerance today is not tolerance at all, but rather intellectual cowardice. Those who hide behind the myth of neutrality are often afraid of an intellectual engagement, unwilling to be challenged by alternative viewpoints. They don't engage in contrary opinions or even consider them. It is easier to hurl an insult, you intolerant bigot, than to confront the idea and either refute it or be challenged or changed by it. Tolerance has become the new intolerant. The classical role of tolerance is this: tolerate all persons in all circumstances by according them respect and courtesy, even when their ideas are false or silly. Tolerate behavior that is moral and consistent with common good. Tolerate and embrace ideas that are sound. This is still a good guideline. And that is the end of the article. But one thing that really stuck with me today is how we see the arguments from the other side of the media. They say homosexuality is something that is a right for homosexuals to be married in churches. Yet, if you state your opposing opinion based on your religious belief system, you are labeled a bigot. You are labeled a hate monger. You are told you are forcing views down others' throats for stating your opinion. And really, when you hear the word tolerance in the news today, it is the meaning of intolerant. When the president says we must be tolerant of all views, he is saying we must be tolerant to the point of the views until we disagree with them. Then it is intolerant because it is bigotry, it is hateful. As the author stated in this article, let me go back to quote it correctly, the morality is the new hate speech, as Coach Daubenmire says. Truth is the new hate speech. So when they call for tolerance in the news, as we see them do so often, when our viewpoint is different, we are considered to be intolerant, caught in a political trap or a debate where people are trying to throw around the word tolerance. Understand, tolerance is the broken down into three elements, very simple. Permitting or allowing a conduct or point of view that you disagree with while respecting the person in the process. That's the definition of tolerance. So anybody who is telling you that not only your viewpoint is wrong, but is hateful or bigoted, is committing an act of intolerance. So I hope you guys learned something from that. If I explained it halfway, in the way half as good as I understood it, then you guys should have. But I want to go to an audio clip where there was a ruling, another ruling of a vote of a state populace against gay marriage, which has been overturned by a judge. Here it is.
Isn't that interesting?
As usual.
Yes. All right. Folks, do you have a pen and paper handy? Now, if you're driving, you could just go back to this. One sentence tells it all. So you did a good job with that. You really did. Here's the one sentence. Please write it down. Keep it in your pocket. Keep it with you. Quote it often. Commit it to memory. It's only 10 words. Here's the sentence. Truth sounds like hate to those who hate the truth. Everything that we're seeing take place right now in terms of, well, you've got to be tolerant, as Joe says. You've got to be tolerant. No, I don't. I don't have to tolerate sodomy any more than I've got to tolerate theft or robbery. I don't have to tolerate homosexuality any more than, okay,
and
not at all.
That's one thing I didn't, that wasn't part of this argument was, being intolerant of evil or, sinful behavior. That's something that we're called to do as Christians. We're called to love the sinner, hate the sin. We're not to promote the sin.
No, exactly. And Coach Dave Dunbar, folks, he writes for News with Views, and of course, Coach Dunbar was on our program here about 6-7 weeks ago. But he states that he was talking about homosexuals and the act of homosexuality and the fact that he does not have to be tolerant of homosexuality. And I agree with him 100%. And, of course, that caused a barrage of hate mail, and not only hate mail threats, but he said, look, I don't hate the person. For example, I don't hate the homosexual any more than I hate a thief. I hate what they do, the trap that they're caught in. I love them enough to continue to tell them the truth, whether they like it or not. And see, that's what Joe was saying. I will not love anyone all the way to hell. Will you? If you're listening to this, is that what... See, tolerance under the guise of love. Are you loving someone all the way to eternal damnation? We all have to be soldiers of the cross. We all have to speak the truth boldly, loudly, and proudly, despite whatever blowback we might experience. And believe me, you will experience blowback. Trust me on this one. But you can't be spineless. You can't, and we find this as well in Islam, for example. What are future historians going to write about the very people who are turning their backs against the truth? For example, George W. Bush embracing Islam, saying it's a religion of peace. Oh, really? Tell that to the victims who have been beheaded and their families. Tell that to the victims who have been sexually mutilated. It's a religion of peace. No, it's not. And for those listening from the Council of American Islamic Relations, which is connected to the Holy Land Foundation. And the Holy Land Foundation, of course, is the organization that was involved in terrorist financing, convicted. To do what you must to try to shut me up, to shut us up. But you're not going to shut us up because we speak the truth. These are facts. This is not hate speech. And again, truth sounds like hate to those who hate the truth. But see, you've got Rick Warren out there and others who are telling us we have to be tolerant. And, there's this middle ground and compromise. Well, compromise has contributed to the current state of our affairs, has it not? We've got to fight this propaganda war head on. We've got to call out those of us who have betrayed us, or those among us who have betrayed us, and who are betraying us for reasons that range from complicity to pride to, as Joe referenced, the tolerance, just to go along to get along. Or for those who have been promised seats at the globalist table to being assured that they're going to live their life with, that they will live life unscathed by royal mandate. Whatever the reason, whatever the cause, there exist those who have turned against the greater objective of restoring and maintaining our freedoms under the guise of tolerance or intolerance, accusations of intolerance, by attacking those of us who are saying no. Because, see, it's time that we choose publicly, take a stand. On whose side do we stand? Do we stand on the side of truth? Or do we stand on the side of tolerance? You see, America is not suffering, and Americans are not suffering from intolerance. We're suffering from the metastatic form of tolerance. We tolerate way too much, don't we?
Absolutely.
I think Joe pointed that out very well. Do you think, by the way, that the Revolutionary War people, the men who engaged in the War of Independence, would have tolerated 1/3 of what's going on in this country right now? The muskets would be loaded, and there'd be storms on the Capitol, the White House, and anyone who got in the way. Why isn't there this war? I'm not advocating it, of course. I'm just asking the question, why? Because we've been programmed, as Joe said, there's this program of tolerance. Oh, truth is relative. No, it's not. It ain't relative. And again, to quote Greg Jackson, I find myself doing that more and more, but the very fact that and I've heard people argue this about the truth is relative. Is it really? Is it really? Because by making that very statement, you're proving the case against it. Think about that.
Yeah. We're going to hit a few more pieces of news to take us out to the top of the hour in just 10 minutes, and we're going to come back for the rest of the third hour, taking your calls at 661-244-9839. We want to hear from you, your comments, questions, concerns about anything you see going on in the news that we've covered, that we have not covered, and any other concerns, questions that you need to ask that we are here to hopefully help answer. This article from RT, separate from the Ebola virus, claims nightmare bacteria spreading rapidly in southeastern United States. Deadly, nearly untreatable superbugs known as CRE, dubbed nightmare bacteria, have spread at an alarming rate throughout the southeastern region of the United States in recent years, new research indicates. Researchers at Duke Medical Center have found cases of antibiotic-resistant CRE, which this is a flesh-eating bacteria, apparently. And it says these bacteria are just about as bad as it gets. We're trying to sound the alarm. This is a problem for all of us in healthcare. Derek Anderson, from the professor from the University of Duke. CRE are a family of bacteria that live in one's guts, often without causing illness. Yet when bacteria escape during ICU treatment, for example, they often cause major hospital-induced infections. 1 in 25 hospital patients contact at least one healthcare-related infection on any given day, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The bacteria prey mostly on vulnerable hospitalized patients, nearly killing half of those who catch this bloodstream infection. It preys on people with weak immune systems, and the strongest antibiotics do not work, and patients are left with potentially untreatable infections which lead to death. It goes on to say that there has been the CRE has been spread from one medical facility in 2001 to many facilities in 46 states by 2013. And if CREs are not controlled, for this from an activist, Kavanaugh from USA Today told medicines currently relied on to combat bacterial infections will become increasingly impotent against them. And researchers found last month that this is one of the deadliest antibiotic-resistant bacteria for the first time found in a food product. Example is raw squid. So this is something that we need to keep our eye out.
Oh, darn. I was planning on having that later for a snack after the show.
We eat so much of that around here. Here's another article on the economic situation in the Middle East and Europe. Globalists push EU-style union for Middle East. And I don't know how many of you saw this. This is as if globalist scheming had not caused yet enough death and destruction in the Middle East. The global government promoting Council on Foreign Relations and various outfits associated with the secretive Bilderberg Group are now pushing for a radical new plot for the region, a European Union-style regional regime to rule over the Arab, Turkish, Kurdish, and other peoples who live there. The sought-after Middle Eastern Union would put populations ranging from Turkey and Jordan to Libya and Egypt under a single authority. The plot moves forward, as in other areas, it would usurp from the peoples of the region to the right of self-government and national sovereignty. It would also advance the long-time establishment of the goal of setting up regional regimes and the path to a more formal system of global governance. Already the peoples of Europe, Africa, South America, and Asia and other regions have had self-styled regional authorities imposed on them against their will. In the Middle East, numerous similar efforts, such as the Gulf Cooperation Council and the Arab League, have been making progress. A true union to rule over the broader Middle East and North Africa through world representation is a major step forward in the ongoing regionalization of power around the world. Using a wide range of pretexts to advance the scheme, top globalist outfits and mouthpieces claim such a regional government would solve the Madrid real and imagined problems. However, the plot being pushed hard by the Council on Foreign Relations and various globalist propaganda organs such as Financial Times, a UK newspaper that has always well represented the shadowy Bilderberg summits, there is good reason to be skeptical at the very least. Just as a warning, European continent found peace through unity by creating what became the EU. Arabs, Turks, Kurds, and other groups in the region could find relative peace and even closer union, claimed Mohammed Ed Hassan, an adjunct senior fellow for Middle Eastern Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, which was further information is published at a piece in the Financial Times on the Council on Foreign Relations websites. After all, most of its problems, terrorism, poverty, unemployment, sectarianism, refugee crisis, water shortages, require regional answers. No country can solve its problems on its own. They are finding that peace through unity, as it is in the reality of the global superiority crushing national sovereignty, is the only way to help the peoples and push through a true peace, which is a requirement, and also requires us to give up self-government. Okay, one more thing here before the top of the hour. I don't know whether ladies and gentlemen you heard about this, but we've got some situations in Chicago where there's one Chicago imam. He's urging his followers to support the Palestinian jihad by joining the fight or donating weapons and money. And now, there are excerpts from his Friday sermons by the Middle East Media Research Project. You might know that as memory on the internet, taken from sermons posted on YouTube. Now, this Chicago Islamic Center's Mohammed El-Imam speaks to those people in America, in the congregation, sitting in Chicago. Those of you who want to wage jihad for the sake of Allah, well, Palestine is calling you, and Gaza is crying out for your help 2 weeks ago, July 18th. However, if you are collaborators with those who give you weapons and money, then keep indulging yourselves with this money of yours. In other words, what he's saying is, assist the terrorists in Gaza. So in America right now, under the nose of this Muslim White House, this Muslim-infested White House by the renegade in chief, the Night Stalker Valerie Jarrett, as well as the Muslim Brotherhood infusion of Muslim Brotherhood operatives into the Department of Homeland Security. You've got an imam in Chicago in a mosque saying, help your brothers in Gaza, right here on American territory. Surprise you, of course not, because you know what? This is happening across just about every mosque in America. Look, folks, I've done surveillance. I've told you this before. Joe's done surveillance. We've done surveillance together on locations, urban locations in Buffalo, New York, where we watched and have videotaped photographic evidence of young people being taught how to rappel down walls, scale up walls. For what purpose? Is it a gym class? No. They're going to be used as tools when the wheels come off this bus. And they will. There will be bloodshed in the streets. Steve Quayle and I have talked about this long before. In fact, we wrote about this. St. Louis guy, I believe he was a Pakistani. I'm not exactly 100% sure on this, and this is from memory from 2005. In fact, he was featured in a St. Louis newspaper saying, we're just waiting to take it to the streets in America, to take the fights to the streets in America. And Christians and Jews, churches and synagogues, that's their target. Folks, this is a very special Friday edition. It's actually, well, let's call it a free-for-all Friday on this, the first day of August 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me, next to me, well, across from me, close enough to hit with a Nerf bat, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann Hagmann Report, folks.
We're going to take a brief break. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay with us.
The final hour of this first day of August 2014 edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report, where we're going to take your calls. We're going to go first to a gentleman who attended the Pikes Peak Prophecy in the News Conference, where so many of our former guests, have been speakers, Stan Deo being one of the more prominent ones, and many others. Stan, I mentioned him because his Garden of Eden presentation was something that I just could not wait to see. But with further ado, we're going to bring on Troy, who attended the conference, and he's going to give us an update and a status report on how the conference went and how much he enjoyed it and his experience with meeting the people he got to meet and how that was. Troy, are you with us?
Yeah, hey, what's up, Skill?
Great to hear from you. Glad you called in.
Oh, you bet. I've been waiting to give you guys the report here, and I would shout out to all the people in the chat room. And I was going to take, I told them I was joking, I was going to take T because we have a W and a V, so I can be T.
Okay, officially dubbed T. Okay. Now we have, 23 letters to go. But
I know. I was staking my claim on a letter.
All right, that's cool. All right. Well, yeah. Maybe can you start out with what about the Garden of Eden? Can you start there and then?
I'll work backwards. I actually, believe it or not, I hung out with Stan. I met him last year when I was let me preface this back. I'm out here in the spring, so this is like in my backyard, literally. I mean, it's like 3 miles. The venue's about 3 miles from the house, so it makes it pretty easy. So last year, believe it or not, I met Stan when I was hanging out with Russ, and he just happened to be there. And I was like talking to him. That guy's got a good memory because he remembered me. He's like, "Oh, you're the Marine dude." And I'm like, "Yeah, hey, what's up, Stan?" And he's in good shape. I got to say, Holly looks exactly like she does on the back of her book. She's a beautiful woman, very nice,
very beautiful woman. Yep.
And
they're both
really down to earth.
Yep.
So it was really cool. Okay, the Garden of Eden was amazing. It's funny because Stan, believe it or not, you think that he's such a great speaker and whatnot. He seemed a little nervous at first, but once he got up there, he just hit it out of the park. And I don't know how much where it's at. I mean, I can tell you, I'll tell you guys where his thesis is somewhere in Africa, but I'm sure he's going to be on. So I don't want to you want me to spoil it, but I'm sure he's going to be on to tell you guys all about it.
You can give us a thumbnail sketch. Stan will get into the details as much as he can. Just give us kind of a thumbnail sketch of what he said. I don't think he'll be speaking out of school. The word is out, so go ahead and give us a thumbnail sketch of where it's at and how he found it, and
Okay, well, the basic premise of it is, Stan is. He's very meticulous, and so he took the Bible and he was figuring out, and basically what he did was he went back to the Pangea type graphics of the Earth, and then he started hammering down on the different spots, and basically where I'll just sum it up. He figured it was in Tanzania, I believe, and there's this crater, and basically with all his calculations and looking at it, he figured that's roughly under about where the Garden of Eden was, and really his presentation was pretty darn convincing. I mean, I was like, okay, it makes sense to me. And of course, now with Africa going hot with Ebola, I mean, he was like saying, hey, he's like, hey, we should get, because he knows I have a prior military background and whatnot, kind of on the infantry side and things like that. He's like, we got to get a team together. I'm like, you need dudes with guns and not as scared of Ebola to go out there. I'm still not sure it's a good idea. But
yeah. But okay, so what you just said, I think I heard you correctly. Stan is stating that according to his research, the Garden of Eden remains intact in Tanzania, in Africa. Is that what you said?
It's in Africa. It's in fact, believe it or not, there's around the ring of it, it's like a crater, more or less. And around the ring of it is actually resorts, more or less, that drop down in, and apparently it's a nature preserve of some form, and they got all kinds of critters running around up and down there. But it's a pretty rough part of Africa where, you got to be armed up pretty good to really want to venture out to there.
Wow. Okay.
But, I mean, once he put it all together, and unfortunately he wasn't able to show us all the Google Maps because of copyright, information and stuff. I mean, I guess Google wasn't down with it, but he showed us some other maps that kind of could show you, where it goes the east and the west and the north and south of the different rivers. And I mean, that guy's mind he's a brilliant man. I mean, I was like, wow, that guy puzzled it out, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. So
yeah, he's going to be on this Tuesday. Okay, yeah, no, folks, Stan Dale will be joining us this Tuesday. I did get an email from him during the week, and he did say that unfortunately there was no press there to cover this because, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. When you've got a physicist, a doctor, essentially, saying, hey, I can back up through my research the Garden of Eden exists, that's a big deal. And it should be a newsmaker, but it wasn't. So he'll be with us Tuesday. But so take us anywhere you want to go, Troy. I didn't mean to kind of take you off your stride there. So go ahead and.
No, that's all right. Like I said, Stan did a great job. I mean, and really his presentation was it was in the evening, so it was like the last presentation of the Friday night. So it was from like 8 to 9, I believe it was 9:15. So it was a late one. I think it should have been a little earlier because people were gassing out after 6-7 hours of classes basically. But his presentation could have easily went 2 hours because he had it. He just had, how he is. He just has the details. Bam, bam, bam. It would be very interesting to see him. Hopefully he puts out a book on this. At least some additional teachings because he could have filled at least 2 hours up. He had that much detail, and I was like, wow, there it is. And it was convincing. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So,
well, you know what, Troy, and
getting there.
Troy, I'll just say this with Joe here, and folks in chat, and you could tell us if this is a good idea. If Stan is agreeable to this, now I don't know what restrictions there might be because of the conference, but I suspect Stan's research, so it's owned by Stan. Perhaps we can have him on for longer than an hour to discuss his findings on Tuesday, and he can give us a blow-by-blow rundown. Give him more time than he had at the conference. What do you think, Joe?
Oh, definitely.
All right, cool. All right. Well,
it could easily fill 2 hours on the presentation, and he had a slideshow, and it was impressive. But let me. Stan was obviously one of the amazing speakers out there, but there was, world-class speakers out there. I got to talk to Paul McGuire in detail. And that guy, I tell you what, he's even funnier in person than he is, talking to you guys. That guy just looks like he must be scrappy. He's just interesting character.
And folks, if you want to see photographs of us with Paul McGuire, it's just go to HagmannandHagmann.com. That's HagmannandHagmann.com. And over on the right, you'll see on the menu tab, you'll see photos. And I believe, what was that, the Orlando conference?
Yep.
Paul was there.
Prophecy in the News Orlando conference.
Right. So you can see us with Paul, and of course, if there's any argument for a blue dot over our faces, those pictures would be it. But go ahead, Troy.
Yeah. So obviously, Paul, and we've heard him, and he's saying the same things that he's been saying, but it's just a little more raw in the person. He can get away a little bit more, but he's I think he's spot on his analysis. And then of course we had Russ, and Russ, you guys have seen Russ in person, and I've seen him. This is my second, and I talk to Russ quite a bit because I take a lot of his classes and training, so I know Russ actually pretty well, and I got a chance to talk to him privately and whatnot and see what's going on, and he's just an amazing speaker because he's so good with his hand gestures. He's a very visual speaker, so really the radio doesn't do him justice when you actually get to see and watch him speak because he's such a physical speaker. So
exactly, we actually had brunch with him. I got to tell you, we had brunch with him, and he was talking about the satanic ritual abuse that goes on, and what was supposed to be, I think, a 45-minute, I think we had like 45 minutes, turned into 2 hours. In fact, it was like 2.5 hours. It was just he's incredible, Russ Dizdar. Fantastic.
he's an amazing speaker and definitely a powerful man, working on God's warriors. And of course, he took some time off this week, and he's going to start his classes up next week. And then I know he's like trying to figure out his conference schedule, but he's been busy. And then of course we got L.A. Marzulli, which that guy's he's just a card when he speaks, and his seminars always are packed to the gills. But L.A.'s cool. He's entertaining, as you guys have probably seen in Orlando too. I didn't know if you got time to speak with one-on-one at L.A., but that guy's funny as heck.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Yep, he is. Well, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you who the dark horse came out of not dark horse. I shouldn't say that again. All the stuff going on, but who came out that I actually hung out with probably the most was a guy by the name of Carl Tykrab, and he's out of Canada. And I think he was new to the speakership this year, or speaking, and he gave a presentation on one presentation that stood out in my mind the most was he talked about the Burning Man and all these different New Age gatherings that are going on. And to me, I never realized how huge they were. I mean, there were some of these gatherings in Europe and England that are over almost 300,000 people, and at one time they're talking about all these different stages of consciousness and stuff. I mean, that guy, if you can track him down, would be what he was talking about was like shocking. And I didn't realize it was all, to that degree, with all these different conferences of New Age gatherings going on a weekly, if not, on a weekly basis. I mean, these are huge, huge gatherings that, with the New Age agenda going on that I never knew about. I'm pretty much in the know on a lot of things. This one I was like, wow, that guy's got something to say.
Very good. And yes, you're absolutely correct. The demonic influenced New Age movement has really experienced a resurgence since 9/11, and even more so since 2008. And I equate that directly with not necessarily as a consequence of, but certainly concurrent to the presence of Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, or Sabarka, whatever you want to call them, in the White House.
And how we elected, we all know about how that all worked out, but it's just, I guess the military vote didn't count. But I digress on that. Another one was Chris Putnam, who, he talked about, or talked over his book, The Supernatural Worldview. I think you guys had him on recently. That guy's just an amazing researcher in general.
He's like a walking encyclopedia, isn't he? I mean, I've never seen a guy that could just rattle. He's like Paul McGuire in the sense where he's got this sponge of a mind, and it's connected very well with his mouth. Unlike us, where he can speak in coherent, complete sentences on things on many topics that are extremely relevant to what's going on today.
Well, he's just that guy. You just don't come. If you want to have a debate, you just don't come unarmed, because that cat would. He just eviscerate you. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
And, his book. I've read his book from cover to cover, and it brings up a lot of really interesting points, and it's well thought out. It's definitely worth reading, I believe. So, I can't.
Well, okay. Now, if there was one particular fact or point, or one particular fact that you learned, or something you learned or found out that surprised you, or would surprise the audience at this prophecy in the news conference, what would it be? Have you thought, or maybe it's several? I don't know.
Well, Doug, I've been thinking about that. You know what? And maybe you can attest to this. What scared me, this one scared me. And most of the news or the stuff that was being presented is, if you've done your research and whatnot, there wasn't a lot of shockers. I mean, the New Age thing to me was a little new. Obviously, figuring out what was the Garden of Eden, that was kind of cool and kind of new. But what struck me, what scared me the most is if all of a sudden they just disappeared, everybody that was 6, I think there'd only be like 15 people left. My point is that all this information is going. There's not that many younger generation out there that's learning this stuff, and so instead, they're being seduced by the New Age with, diaries of vampires and Lost Girl and things like that, but yet there's some amazing supernatural stuff that's going on, and yet the younger generation just seems like it's not involved. The people that need it the most are not getting it. And I was talking to Paul, and this was funny because I had an observation. I said to Paul, I said, I said, one of these days, I said, do you realize that, because he's in the baby boom demographics, and I'm solid Gen X. And I said to him, one of these days, these kids, these millennials, are going to wake up. And I said, these are the kids that have been hopped up on antidepressants, violent video games, and gangster rap. I said, one of these days, they're going to figure out that, the generational theft that's going on and the total screwing with the bait. I said, they're going to wake up and be angry, and they said they're going to turn your generation to Soylent Green. And he thought that was kind of funny. But, that's kind of the truth. I said, we got combat vets that have come back 5-6 tours, and I can't see how this ends happy.
Very well said. Yeah, it's not going to have a happy ending. So very well said. Yeah, indeed. And very good observation about the generation.
That's what I found the spookiest thing is what I see is that, and then I thought to myself, and I was like, God, what's the deal here? We have all these, great youth organizations and things like that, and this is some amazing scholarly information that's going out that can be presented to, in a fascinating way to, I think, the younger generation. But somehow, it was spooky. I literally sat down one class and I was like counting all the gray hairs or white hairs, and I'm like, I was like up to 300 before I lost count. And I'm like, if all of a sudden the 60-year-olds got raptured away, which I'm just joking here, but all of a sudden they got raptured away, I said there'd be 25 of us left standing. And I'm going to tell you,
it is, and that's why, folks, T, I'll call you, that's why we've got to fight against things like Common Core. And that's why we have people that come on, like Deborah Tavares, come on and talk about Common Core, because this is the indoctrination of a generation that, as you pointed out, that's all hopped up on antidepressants and, that have cut their teeth on movies about vampires and werewolves and Lord knows what else that will be at some point being turned loose.
Well, exactly, and here's what I say. Once they figure out that Social Security and Medicare and even Obamacare is generational theft, they're going to be angry, very angry. And that's what I find funny, too, which I know that Obamacare is a dead man walking. I got a bunch of teenagers. These poor devils, got high school degree, diplomas, but, they're kind of working class kids and whatnot. And, they're making $1,400-$1,500 a month. They spend $200 more. None of these guys are like, we're not registering for this stuff. So all the people that are sick and lame right now are the ones that signed up for Obamacare. All the healthy people are totally blowing it off. So this thing's doomed. Doomed.
Yeah. Well, and you make a good point, and this is something we'll cover in a later program. The entire objective of Obamacare is to bring down the healthcare system, to put it on the back of the vanishing middle class, but just the non-royalty. And you're exactly correct that it's doomed from the start. But we're going to come out of this on the other side with a single payer system, a socialized healthcare system, and really no insurance carriers outside of the government. So you're exactly right.
I don't see how we come out on the other side of this one. Then you put on $1 trillion in education that these poor devils, they can't bankrupt it out. That's a horrifying bubble right there. And these kids are basically indentured servants. And I think when it doesn't end well, it just ends violently.
We are a captured operation. Yeah, we're a captured operation, and the bankers, the banksters, the royalty in this generation, they have squandered the wealth of every minor, shall we say, or every child and every child and grandchild of our generation and the future generations. Gone.
And that's where I think once they figure this out, that's where it becomes horrifying. And if you think about it, this is also the generation that, grew up with abortion's okay. I mean, if that's abortion's okay, we can pass it on the other side and say eugenics to old people's okay as well. I mean,
oh yeah,
they've been desensitized on this thing, so that's what's kind of spooky. But here's the thing. Another thing that we take away from the Prophecy Conference is basically that the sense of urgency that was there, that time is short, is one of the overall themes of this, especially with Israel going crazy over there. Then you got all the craziness going on in Iraq. Which, by the way, I do have a bit of a comment as a veteran and a war veteran. I served in the first Gulf, and I was in Saudi Arabia for 7 months, and that place is miserable as. I think I shouldn't even say that. So let me tell you, the Saudis are one of the most hostile government on the planet too. So I'm thinking the guns should have been pointed southernly as well. That being said, if we go back and do a little history, we realize that back in the late 80s, we were back in Saddam. I mean, the stuff we blew up was our stuff. That was kind of a joke when I was over there. We were blowing up our own stuff. I mean,
boy, I'm glad you said that.
we were
really
harming him because the enemy of our enemy is not our enemy. You know what I mean? Is that at the time Saddam was our boy fighting the Iranians. So and if truth be told, the reason he invaded Kuwait was because they pretty much thought that those Kuwaiti oil fields were part of Iran. Just like, the Jews, think Gaza, it's part of theirs. So he kind of had he kind of had a leg to stand on in that aspect. I mean, it's the Middle East is just a bad deal, man. I mean, I got buddies of mine over there that have been 4 or 5 tours, man. And these guys, until you get that distinctive crack above your head and you understand that adrenaline and you've actually been in that kind of position, it's hard to explain. And you kind of get addicted to what we call the rush. I hate to say it like that, but it's the truth. That's why these guys come back, get motorcycles, and, because they're all amped up. And, you try getting shot at for, 20, 30 minutes at a time, it leaves a little bit of it's hard to, settle down from that. And the guys from Vietnam, they got 365 days. These guys, 5 tours over and for what purpose? That's why I was a little, last night I heard W talking, I'm like, okay, I get it. These guys, that's a bad deal, but we kind of created that mess ourselves because there was no good reason why we decided to jack up the Middle East except for, oil, which let's call it what it was. It was a war for oil or control.
This is a Saudi agenda. We are a captured operation on the mid-level range. I'm not talking about the Illuminati, the Luciferian, the big ones here, but just on the nation-state level, we're captured operations doing the bidding of the Saudis. We are doing the work of the Saudis, the military might for the Saudis, the carving out of nations for the Saudis, creation of the Islamic Caliphate for the Saudis, right? I mean, that's what we're doing.
Well, and then another thing, too, Afghanistan, the whole objective was to go supposedly kill Osama. Well, we smoked him like 3 years ago, supposedly, and I still think that's a bunch of hooey on that deal. And all of a sudden the SEALs mysteriously get blowed up, and this doesn't make sense on that deal. But the point is this: after 10 years of all-out war and stuff, only thing we've got is more heroin going through the United States than anything. I mean, we're paying off warlords by the truckloads. I mean, it's just a bad deal. Every time I see a serviceman get whacked over there, I'm like, what are we doing? It's just like Smedley Butler said in 1933. He's like, war's a racket, man. And people don't realize Smedley Butler was the 2-time Medal of Honor winner. This guy was not like some kind of death jockey. This guy was a war hero, and he figured it out.
Yeah.
So, going over there, it's a bad deal. But, you just got to, I think the other take is that we stand firm in God. You do your best every day, and, you know that your number's up, it's up, and you're going to live as long as God wants you on the planet. And you got a purpose. Amen. And that's how you keep saying. Because if you take a look at it, and everybody's like, well, what do we do? And there's, at this point, you get right with God and you do the best you can, and you make your preps. But, I think you don't go too overboard, because I was talking to Stan about this. I'm like, what are those guys in the Black Forest, which is in Colorado here last year, all the preppers and stuff that were out there, they got burned out. I'm like, what happens if there's a fire? You know, nobody has a plan until you get punched. You know, just like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. You can have all the preps you want, but if all of a sudden social services break down and firefighting and there's chaos, I mean, mission dictates. You have to have presence of mind. I think that's where the people in the chat room and the listeners need to take solace, is that they're ahead of the game, you know, from the rest of them. And I think just having that slight edge might make the difference, having that presence of mind.
Very well said.
Other than that, you can't worry about it. You know, I think the Bible says 126 times to fear not. That's all you can do.
We are to fear no man, but fear God.
Absolutely. Troy, I want to thank you for calling in. We're going to have to get to some other callers, but thanks for the update on the conference in Pikes Peak, and we really appreciate it, and calling again soon.
Joe, I delivered all your messages to all your guys, so hopefully they'll be calling. I just told them to give you a call, so they said okay.
Much appreciated, Troy. God bless you. You stay safe, and we'll talk later.
Chat room, have a good night, and everybody, God bless, and see you on the other side.
All right. Thanks, Troy. All right. That was Troy, who attended the Pikes Peak Summit, or Prophecy in the News Conference in Pikes Peak that we were unable to attend, giving us a status update, among other things, and we thank you for that, Troy. We're going to move on to another phone call. We're going to go to area code 812. 812, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight? 812? I don't know if I heard somebody trying to talk that cut out, but we'll come back to you. We're going to go to area code 309. 309, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Oh, hi there. This is Jeremy from Canton, Illinois. You almost sunk my battleship yesterday.
Well, we tried. Wrong peg, wrong hole. What did we do?
Well, you said something about Peoria, Illinois in that, and I live about 24 miles from there.
I'm trying to remember in what context we mentioned Peoria, but I think it was just in a exemplary, or I think I was trying to make a point about something. I don't recall.
I don't recall either.
Yeah. But, well, what do you think? You know, what concerns you the most today?
Oh, talking about my son might not have a future, and I hope that doesn't happen, but they've been planning this since 1914, but even farther than that. But bank's been taken over since 1914. You know, if you read Jekyll Island, and that's when the Federal Reserve came into being.
That's right. That's right. Everyone should read The Creature from Jekyll Island, also The Secrets of the Federal Reserve, None Dare Call It a Conspiracy. All of those are good primers for what we're seeing today, but the bottom line is, the generation, the young people now are not going to have a future because it was taken away from them and it was stolen from them. Just as the last caller said, they were sold in, they have been sold into bondage by this generation. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to sit by and let them be slaves, let them be the slave labor to the Chinese?
We need
Go ahead, sir.
We need like everybody full force. If we need to do something about it, we need to do something now. We need everybody, do something, because they've been planning this for thousands of years, and they're just about complete with their work. But
we know how the story ends. We're fighting from a position of victory, but we still have to make it through to the other side. So yes, we can't be keyboard warriors. We cannot just be we can't be caught up in that call your senator, call your congressman, send them an email, fax them, whatever. No, we've got to stand up, speak out, be strong, and we've got to say we're not now, not us, no more. And we have to act in a manner that is the most effective. And we all have to stick together because we're all in this together. And you're absolutely right, though. I mean, this has been long in the planning. Folks, go back to Pike and Mazzini and all that. Understand the Masonic secret societies. Understand all that. This is why we talk about all of this, to expose the plans. And if you have any doubt about the validity of this, what you're saying, sir, if anyone has any doubts about the validity, just check the back of your money. And, it says, in God we trust. Well, which God is that?
Yeah, it also has 13 stars, 13 arrows. It also has, supposedly it's not the eagle, it's the
Phoenix.
Bird. The Phoenix, yeah.
The Phoenix, yep.
Phoenix. Yeah.
The self-immolating Phoenix.
Yeah.
Very good, sir. Well, yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. I'll just let.
All right. Well, thanks for your call. All right, buddy. Appreciate that. Yeah, folks, we are in a situation where at this point you can feel the acceleration. You can feel, if you can't feel it, just like Troy said about Pikes Peak, the acceleration of that. That we're getting close to something, a significant event on the horizon. We need to understand that we're close, and whatever that might be, folks, we've got to. You know what?
Keep fighting, stand strong, overcome. Never give in. We have to have the faith that the Lord calls us to have, that He gave as an example through His apostles, through His works that when He was here on earth. We had to have His faith that He had when He carried the cross, bearing all of our sins to His physical death, being sinless Himself, carrying the burden of our sins. The least we could do is have a faith enough in Him to be able to change things through prayer, change our situations, our families, His bride, and bring them to Him by coming together, not by creating division or discord and according to doctrine or interpretation of doctrine, but we need to be strong in our faith. We need to be strong in our bond between each other as people in the body of Christ. And if we can't do that, then we don't belong in the body of Christ, because the only thing we're creating there is making a liar out of the gospel, because we're told that division doesn't come from the Lord but from Satan. And if we can't be undivided, then we have no business being in the body ourselves.
That's right. I just want to give a hat tip to Lewis. Lewis, God bless you. Thank you very much for your email. He writes in, this is about our conversation earlier in the show, that he says, I had a conversation about the quality of television shows with my dog the other day. She's a good listener. Isn't that wonderful about our wonderful canine companions? God has given us such a great gift with our canines. Anyway, he writes, I totally agree with you about TV programs. And he writes this, he doesn't watch TV that much, but when he does older television programs, for example, The Riflemen. Remember The Riflemen, folks? Chuck Connor. He talked to his son about the story of Job. And Lewis writes, my immediate thought was, that would never be talked about on television programs of today, at least not in the context in which it was during that episode. Lewis, you are so right. God bless you. Thank you so much for the email. By the way, before we move on, I just want to mention this. Forgot to mention. I got to. Hey, perfect that time. Tomorrow night on the weekend edition with Sheila Zielinski, two guests: Christopher C. Horner, New York Times best-selling author, Washington attorney, and outspoken political critic of climate science. He's going to be on with us. In fact, if you want to look him up, he wrote, and I'm going to update the website today to give you the information about this, but he wrote, Red Hot Lies, How Global Warming Alarmists Use Threats, Fraud, and Deception to Keep You Misinformed. in other books as well. And then Dr. Tim Ball is going to be on, the author of Deliberate Corruption of Climate Change. He's a renowned climatologist, environmental consultant, and former professor of climatology. So very much, folks, it's going to be an excellent broadcast tomorrow night at the weekend edition with the weekend vigilante Sheila Zielinski.
And I will be on Dave Hodges' show, The Common Sense Show, Sunday night from 11 to 1 Eastern Time, the last 2 hours of his program. So if you get a chance, tune into that. Should be fun and fantastic. It's an honor to be invited on his show, and really looking forward to doing that. So tune in if you get a chance. Back to the phone lines. We're going to go to area code 530. 530. Thanks for calling in. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Thank you, Joe. Hey, this is the second time I've called in. I called in a long time ago with response to something that was talked about earlier in the show, and I think you're having a great show tonight because you sure are covering a lot of territory. You know, I mean, there's so much in the news today, like you say, and but going back to, like, Doug, I thought you did really well explaining about Israel, how, you know, the media has a way of just demonizing them. And I'm kind of working on a book. I've never written a book before, but, you know, and it's kind of like investigating the Word of God is kind of where I'm going with that. But when you were talking about Israel, I was thinking about, like, David and Goliath, and how the media is like the mouth of the giant, you know, saying, "Send out your strongest men," and they wanted. He says, "Why should the whole nation die? Just let us have your strongest men." And of course, David came out and he says, "Who is this that defies the God of Israel?" And we know how the story ends, but it's so true. I mean, you know, and they sure do get a very twisted report from the media, and but anyway, there's a lot of topics, and Joe, I just want to say I really appreciate your faith in the Lord. It's blessed me a lot of times when you refer always back to God, because that is our greatest hope, knowing that He is in control, and no matter what happens, we are His children. And I know there's a lot of people that listen to your show that, you know, kind of like the raptures, will want to sidestep that a lot of times, but I'm one that reads in Isaiah where it says, "Come into thy chamber and hide yourself for a while until my indignation be past." Well, maybe, you know, the fact that we're going to see tribulation as Christians, that's happening right now. We are seeing tribulation, but when the 70th week of Daniel kicks in, I think that's what Isaiah might have been talking about. And it's also like the virgins that there were in Matthew 24. There were 10 of them. They were all virgins, meaning they were all good. They were all, in a sense, pure, but 5 were wise and 5 were kind of foolish because they didn't have the oil in the lamp, and we know that oil always is symbolic of that Holy Spirit. So I would just say to all the listeners in the Hagmann Report is to really, really take a deep look into what you believe and in your heart, and know there is a God in heaven, and He loves you so much. I mean, it's just incredible how much God loves us all, and He does have a plan. And what's amazing is when God said, "Let us make man in our image and likeness," I mean, yeah, that made the angels jealous. I mean, and the other beings. So we have a very, very high calling, and what you two are doing today, and I really think it's great. The Father and Son working together. I'm amazed about that. I kind of hoped for that with maybe my son, but God had us seen something else. He saved a girl that was drowning, and he lost his life in doing so. But Doug, I feel, it was really bad. It was really sad, and I'm still dealing with that on a daily basis. So with a loss such as that, it's like part of me died when I saw my son gone, and so it's just a blessing. And he and I had done a Christian talk radio show in the area that I'm living in on a basis, but he was on the road a lot, and sometimes he'd have to call in to do the show and stuff. But I'm not doing that anymore. But I really appreciate you two. And when I hear Joe refer to you as Dad, it just blesses my heart every time, because I think it's great that Father and Son have a faith in the Lord and trusting for God's will in these times. And you're waking up a lot of people. You woke up me. There's a lot of things I've learned from the speakers you've had on your show, and I appreciate it. I really do. It just Just saying, you know. But,
wow, I'm blown away by what you just said. Now I'll tell you this: you write that book, and you embrace and act upon your dreams and put focus into it. And as far as your son is concerned, I'm sorry. Your first name?
My first name is Gene. My name is Gene Lesage.
Okay.
You guys are both my friends on a Facebook page.
Okay.
And you can call me G or Gene if I call in again. I don't know. You know, there's so many incredible speakers, and I hate to take up time that, you know, because I learned so much from what other people are saying.
Gene, and I would like everyone listening to this broadcast, Gene, we hold you up in prayer as well as your son who has passed on, and we pray for your strength, because what you've gone through, you know, is tragic. But I'll tell you something: God is with you, and everyone, please hold Gene up in prayer.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. I really do. Yeah. So you two just seize the moment that you have right now as father and son working together, because you know, my son, he was a Christian boy. He had a faith. His favorite scripture was in Romans: "What can separate us from the love of God? You know, not death that's a Romans scripture out of Romans." But like some of the research I've been doing in the scriptures, I mean, you know, it's funny because the book is living, and every time you do read it, you get something new out of it. Like in Genesis, I've had people argue with me that, you know, it contradicts itself, because when it's talking about God saying, "Let us make man," first he says in one chapter before he makes that statement, he says that God created man, male and female. Then a few chapters go by, and then he says, then he formed man out of the dust of the earth. Well, I was thinking that when God said, "Let us make man in our image and likeness," that was the spiritual man that he was creating. And then later on, he went to the dust of the earth, and he fashioned out man. He breathed the life, and the dust became a living soul. And that was the physical creation of man. So we were first created in his image and likeness in spirit. And so I'm just seeing things like that I've never seen in the scripture. I had a Jehovah's Witness come to my door the other day, and I was telling them how Jesus is God, the Son of God. He is God. And they said, well, even Jesus said that the Father is greater. So I took the element of time. I said, let's just look at time. You know, there's three elements to it. There's the past, the present, and the future, which is greater. You know, what I've just said a few seconds ago is the past now. What I'm saying now is the present. In a few minutes from now, we'll be parting ways, and that'll be the future. So which is greater? It's all the same. It's one God with three distinctive things. And how I come up with that is like when Jesus was trying to tell us, because we live in linear time. He lives outside of time. There's no beginning, no end with him. But he referred to himself as he who was, he who is, and he who is to come. And it also says that he's the same today, yesterday, and forever. So when you think of time as we know it, someday we're going to be into that place where it's outside of time, where he is. And so as we live our life, it's just a trial, it's just a test. There's a mystery. I say it's a mystery of evil that I don't understand, and that's what's going on in the Middle East and with this Hamas and all these terrorists. But, I mean, that comes all the way back to Abraham. But anyway, guys, I'm glad I got to call in again. I did call a long time ago. We were talking about what would cause someone to take the mark of the beast. And at that time, that was a long time ago, I was saying, well, what if they promised eternal life for beings? And now that we're talking about, you know, where science is going, that might be one of the things they'll throw at people to try to get them to conform to that. I don't know if you remember that, Doug. Do you remember that?
I vaguely do. Yep, I vaguely do.
A while ago. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But hey, thank you for your prayers. I really appreciate you putting out a call prayer, because you know, my wife and I, we're doing okay. He was our only boy, and he was an entertainer. He was a country music person, and if I mention who he worked for, everybody in your audience would probably know that are a country fan. But it was one of the hardest things that I had to do, is to get a phone call and hear that, you know, he was saving some woman's life in the Bahamas. He was on a trip, and he saved the girl, by the way, but lost his life in doing so. So I thought that was a great thing that he did, you know.
Well,
sure
as a believer, Oh, yeah, and as a believer, though, you know, Gene, that you will be with him again, and he's in the hands of the Lord, and
amen.
You know, wow, but it's still tough, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it is. God gave me a beautiful dream. I was standing in my kitchen, and I heard this voice behind me saying, "Hey, Dad," he says, "Do you remember when I was telling you?" And I'm thinking, no, wait a minute, this can't be you. You're gone, you know. So I says, I'll turn around, and when I turn around, I'll see him, and I'll wake up. So I turn around, and there he is with a big smile, talking about some people that got saved in the south near Nashville and stuff. And so after he was telling me that, I says, I need to just tell him to stop. And I says, Gene, his name is Gene like mine, stop, you know. And I says, I need to hug you. And I went over and I figured, well, as soon as I give my son a hug, I'm going to wake up. You know, this is just a dream. This can't be real. And when I went over and I gave him a hug, he hugged me back, and I squeezed him, and he squeezed me back. I felt him, and I went, wow. And then I stopped, took a couple of steps back, and he was still smiling. And I says, Gene, what happened to you down in the Bahamas? And his face went from a big smile to a very inquisitive look, and he says, what are you talking about here? Well, what do you mean? What happened? You know, he didn't even know that he was gone. I mean, that's what. And then I woke up, of course. When I asked him that question, I kind of wish I never had asked him that, because maybe the conversation would have went on a little bit longer. But anyway, I don't want to take up any more time. I just wanted to weigh in tonight and just tell you guys you're doing a great job, and you did cover a whole lot of talk. And in the world, it's a scary place, but you know, the spirit of fear is not of God, but power, love, and a sound mind. And we can have that in our heart and hide it in our heart, because I know that God is going to be there for the people that truly love Him, no matter what happens.
Amen, brother.
God bless you, and thank you for sharing the story about your son. You know, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Very brave of you to do so.
Thank you,
but
Joe.
It's a message of hope, and I pray that you stay strong and stay in your faith, and that will get you through. And God bless you, and thank you for the kind words and the compliments that aren't deserved. But you have a great night.
Hey, Joe, I want to say the same thing that somebody else once said to you. Take it easy on your dad, okay? He's the only dad you got, you know.
Thanks, Gene.
I should
heard
make
you guys
a sign, so I remember.
Yeah. Hey, I love you guys. All right, and God bless you both, and thank you for the kind words to me. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Thank you so very much. God bless.
Thank you.
All right. Wow, what a great call. Folks, I got to tell you, Thursday, yesterday, Israel called up 16,000 reservists. The IDF called up 16,000 reservists for duty starting yesterday morning. Raising, and now we talked about this yesterday, but now there's 86,000 total reservists mobilized for the Gaza war. Folks, this is going to get a lot hotter, a lot quicker. Israel knocked out a Gaza power station. The beheadings of Christians have increased. A couple of other things. The United Nations, of course, Security Council met Thursday about Gaza. They heard humanitarian briefings under Secretary General for the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Valerie Amos, and the Commissioner General of the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East. Look, and this, by the way, it was featured on CanadaFreePress.com, where I'm a senior contributor and writer for. It's just out of control. The indignation what's taking place is out of control. They expect it to get a lot hotter. You can perhaps reset or set your Armageddon clock, because we know Israel is the timepiece, is God's timepiece.
Yes, it is, and we're going to try and fit one more call in here. We have about 4 minutes left. We're going to go to area code 936. I don't believe it came to you yet. 936. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, Joe. Mike Boone here in the big thicket of East Texas. So good to hear y'all.
Great to hear from you.
Well, thanks. Well,
Russell us up some of that barbecue down there.
Oh, not a problem. And we got the best barbecue going down here, no doubt. You can't hardly shake a stick without running into some other barbecue place. They don't know about East Coast pizza at all, though. Somebody could really clean up down here at a good pizza.
Oh yeah, well you got to have the New York water to make the dough for the pizza. That's a secret.
That water taste.
It's a secret. People love New York pizza. The secret is the dough that's made with the water up there. Don't ask me why, but in fact I'm afraid to think about that. But all right, what's on your mind?
Well, first I wanted to just kind of speak up for the cyber warriors out there. That the reason that there are a few people woke up in this country might be, exactly for them. But they did a pretty good job a decade or two ago in getting a lot of people knowing what the heck was going on. And I know we got to, be more than just armchair quarterbacks out here on our computers, but
I think what you're saying is we're giving them a run for their money, perhaps. Maybe converting some.
There's plenty of enemy out there in the cyber world, no doubt, but a lot of good people too that have been defending the faith for a long time. And just a shout out for them. And I'll tell you what else. I want to pat everybody on the back about the fact that the chemtrails have slowed down significantly this year. That we're not seeing them not even close to what used to be being done. This spring and summer here in Texas, it's way down to a dull roar. And I remember, living in Indianapolis, and they'd fog the whole place in with the chemtrails. And
what do you think that is?
It's the same way.
Why?
Why would they do that? It's a population control thing, I believe.
No, I mean, why would the chemtrail activity stop or slow down? I should say, in your area.
They were getting. Because enough people were getting woke up to it, and they were going to have a bigger problem on their hands from people waking up just from looking up in the sky. It was getting out.
Well, okay.
I don't know. That's my theory on it.
Yeah, it's a theory. I mean, it's a good theory. I suppose, however, we've got a renegade in chief that is engaged in overt criminal activity and doubling down on such criminal activity without a care, apparently. And there's few people are screaming about it. So that's the only reason I question about your theory about the slowing down of the chemtrails. But that's, by the way, that does concern me a little bit. Any type of change in activity concerns me a little bit, and that does. Wondering why the slowdown, but interesting observation nonetheless.
Got something else for you, Doug. This new crisis with the people coming over the border and so forth. Well, wouldn't the Christian answer to all of that be to go down there and love on them people and welcome them? Wouldn't Jesus have us, taking in little children and so forth?
Yeah, if they were little children that were the majority of people coming over the border.
We're probably talking gang members and so forth, but
we're to help anybody we see that's in need. Yeah, but
yeah, the way this thing's being depicted is mothers and babies coming in, and I don't know. I'm not on the border, but
less than 10% children, from what I can gather through my research.
And that's exactly right. And you're talking about numbers that are being hidden from the public, Border Patrol agents that are being made eunuchs by executive mandate, that they've got virtually no authority. We are in a crisis situation, and yes.
Well, wouldn't that just kind of jack up the whole thing? That of all these churches, a good Baptist, and everybody came down there to the border to take somebody home with them, get a little meal. I don't know. I think it'd be great. Might defease the whole deal.
Hey, look, thanks for the call. We're at the end of the program. God bless you, my friend. All right, man.
Thanks for the call.
Yeah, folks, that'll do it for us tonight, the first
Tomorrow
day
night,
of August.
Weekend Vigilante and Hagmann Report will be here, 8 p.m. Central Time, Eastern Time. Do not miss it. Thank you to each and every one of you. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. God bless. And we'll see you guys here tomorrow.